Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television is sponsored by Nutrien. Nutrien, feeding the future.
Hello everyone and welcome to Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television. I'm Mike McKee. My guest on the program is Travis George. He's the Associate Director of Financial Aid here at Florida Gateway College. Not having any money is no excuse why you shouldn't go to school, and Travis is going to talk all about how you can qualify for financial aid. We'll do that when we come back. Don't go away.
There's a lot of fear in coming back to school. I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but one of the teachers was Miss Araceli. She gave me direction. Every single time I had a question, she'll put down whatever she's doing and she'll sit there with you until you get it. 50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through those doors. The other 50% is doing the work.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Welcome back to Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television and WCJX Radio, the X, and WQHL, the Big 98. We welcome those audiences to our program as well. Travis George is the Associate Director of Financial Aid here at Florida Gateway College, and we're going to talk about financial aid. Travis, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
We're on radio too, so we can't show too many pictures during this, so we're just going to be us here talking about financial aid. The excuse that some people have is, I just don't have any money to go to school. Not a real good excuse anymore, is it?
No, definitely not. With the way that the administrations are now making, especially state colleges, more affordable, having no money is definitely not an excuse why you can't go to school. Especially for our institution, we were ranked in the top 50 in the entire country as one of the most affordable schools. I think we came in number 15. And so affordability is what Florida Gateway College has kind of stood on, and that has helped us with national recognition.
Well, and you know, that is important because this day and age of $30,000 a semester education and then not being able to find a job really has put a sour taste in some people's mouth. But we're not only affordable, but we have degree programs that will get you a job when you graduate, which is also extremely important to not only the student, but their parents who are footing the bill a lot of times.
Of course. Yes, sir, that is definitely important. And we've been able to cater programs that, especially our CTE programs, that allow students to come to school here and leave with something that allows them to go straight into the workforce. The good thing is the free application for federal student aid will actually ask the students that question. You know, are you coming here to get a certification, or are you planning on getting a 2-year degree and transferring to another university? And that allows them to see how much money we can actually allocate to help students continue school while they're in school, going through different programs, and like you say, the success rate of that, them being able to find some type of employment once they graduate.
Yeah, because you know, working sometimes is pretty much an important part of life for some students. They just can't afford not to give up work because they have to provide for their families. Right. Let's talk about the different financial aids that are out there. What types of financial aids can students apply for?
Well, typically with the basic free application for federal student aid, that qualifies students for mainly federal grants and federal loans. Typically, we offer 4 different types of aid here. That's with the grants, which is our federal Pell Grant, which is based off of an expected family contribution number that they get. We also offer the Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant and the Student Assistance Grant, and both of those are done through the financial aid application. The other 2 that we get from that application are the federal loans, the subsidized loan, and the direct loan. Apart from those, we also offer scholarships and work study programs here. So those are benefits to our students. You know, with the grant money, you don't have to pay that back. And then with the federal loan programs, those do have to be money that does have to be repaid. Mostly with the federal loans, those loans have to enter repayment 6 months after a student graduates, 6 months after a student ceases to enroll at least half-time, or 6 months after a student ceases to enroll. And then with scholarships, we offer the scholarships from the state of Florida, and we also have foundational scholarships, which students can apply for here. And then our work studies program is a program that allows us to place students in departments, and they get paid while they're doing it. And it is minimum wage, but at least it gives them a way of generating some type of income while they're in school.
Well, and the title of that job is work study, so they work, but they also study while they're at work.
Yes, sir. Definitely. With those programs, especially with work study programs, it works with the student schedule, and the department heads that they're working under, first they understand that they have to be understanding to student schedules, and they have to be flexible. Our students, we want to push the education factor first, and then we want to push work second. And so we definitely want to support those students.
How many hours per week is that?
20 hours a week.
Okay, so I mean, minimum wage, that's a couple $100 a week.
Yes, sir. Minimum wage went up to $8.25, so $8.25 an hour. From the I think it was $8 or $8.10.
So a little less than a couple hundred, but
Yes, sir.
that's still pocket money. Again, when you're having to put gas in your car to drive out to the college, if you're taking classes, if you're not lucky enough to take online classes. Let's talk about payment plans for some of these loans. Does that scare a lot of people off?
Honestly, there were so many times I hear of these horror stories that happen to students in terms of federal loans. What we really try to make sure that students understand is that federal loans is not money that is lent to students from banks, but it's money that's lent to students from taxpayer dollars. And so this is from the federal government, so they are a whole lot more lenient when it comes to working with students. They are a whole lot more flexible with the way that they're able to work with students. So if a student misses a payment, they can contact their loan servicer, and they'll try to help them get into a program that helps to offer repayment. You know, even when it comes to students that come into my office and say, well, you know, they garnish my taxes. They don't have to garnish your taxes if you contact your loan servicer. It's just as easy to get into even a repayment plan. There are 7 different ways now to repay your federal loan, and especially with the introduction of the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, that if a student or a graduate of an institution has a federal loan from an institution and they work for a nonprofit organization for 10 years, that debt can be forgiven.
Let me ask you about one size doesn't fit all, correct? I mean, you're not going to get a loan for or federal money for this amount of money for this program. It's going to be catered to what your program is, right?
Typically, when it comes to borrowing loans, we award students what they're eligible for. But before they can ever get a federal loan, they have to do entrance counseling. The entrance counseling says borrow only what you need. Typically here, students don't have to take out federal loans unless there's additional educational expenses. For example, a student might need to purchase another laptop or anything like that. So we do offer those loans. And so it's not catered to program, it's catered to student eligibility. And so, for example, if a student is eligible for $3,500 for an entire year, we ask a student to borrow only what they need, but they can get the full $3,500 for that entire year.
But they have to pay that $3,500 back.
Yes, sir. They will.
What about Pell Grants? Is that a one-size-fits-all for each? I mean, not every program out here costs the same, because we have Associate in Arts, which is a transfer, a 2-year that goes to a 4-year, but there are also some terminal certificates and degrees that finish here.
Yes. So even with the federal Pell Grant, that's based off of an expected family contribution. When a student completes their free application for federal student aid, at the end they'll get what says EFC, which is expected family contribution. And if that number is 0, a student can qualify for $3,048 just for one semester. So with our tuition being $103.32 per credit hour, if you multiply 13 times 103.32, you're looking at about maybe $1,300. That's not including fees. That student is still looking at somewhere upward of about a $1,700 credit, which means at the end of that semester, we give that money back to that student. So the need to have federal loans here, you really don't need them, because actually if you have a 0 EFC, that will actually cover your full tuition.
What is the typical, does it depend on the family, what they can contribute?
It factors in a lot of things. I actually just finished a class on the certification part of it that allows us to actually put in formulas for EFCs, and it is not an easy process. Actually writing in numbers, it looks at several things. It looks at adjusted gross income for families. It looks at the number in the household. It looks at the state that you're in, that you're coming from. It also looks at any assets, any business income. It factors all that into what is expected for the student to actually pay towards their tuition. So there are actually several factors that give us that number.
Now, Pell Grant doesn't have to be paid back?
Pell Grant does not have to be paid back, but there are instances where students will owe an institution money. So, for example, if a student decides they want to come to school during the fall and they end up getting their refund check, or let's say they end up getting a refund check, and then after the refund they decide to do a total withdrawal. After doing a total withdrawal, we have to do what's called a return to Title IV funds. Once we do that, that specifies that a student actually owes money because they didn't complete 60% of their classwork or class time, then that will tell us what a student may, so a student could possibly owe part of the Pell Grant back if they have accepted that.
Well, and the reason for doing that is so that the student will finish the
Correct.
work, and if you you hold that carrot out that you got to pay this money back if you don't finish, you have to pay us back.
Correct, and we do. We want students to understand that they're coming here to finish. Even before students do total withdrawals, the good thing is we have awesome advisors here that will tell students, before we do, because the advisor has to sign off on the total withdrawal, and so does our department. And so they make sure they speak with students and say, go speak with financial aid, just so that way students are aware, you might owe money back to the school, because we do want students to finish. And even if a student comes up to our office to ask us about doing a total withdrawal, the good thing is if there's a way to save at least one class, if they can salvage at least one class in that semester, 9 times out of 10 they don't end up owing money back. But if they do a total withdrawal where they have no classes, it possibly ends up hurting them. And the biggest problem is when they try to come back to school, or if they go to another institution, they cannot get their official transcripts because that balance is still owed.
So there's a way that they're going to get their money, but
Yes.
the key is to try to stay in school.
Yes.
What typically will the student debt be that decides to withdraw halfway into the semester?
If we look at student debt, depending, it does vary. Most of the time we're looking at maybe $600 to $800. That's a typical average.
Well, but if you've already spent this money on whether it's rent or if you've got an apartment that you're renting closer to campus, that money's gone, and it becomes more and more difficult to pay back.
Correct. There are a couple things that actually work for students' favor. So if we look at it in terms of an age year, so an age year starts from July 1 until June 30th. So let's say a student is in this semester in the fall, and the student decides to do a total withdrawal. We do a return of Title IV funding process. It shows that that student owes money. When if that student decides to come back in the spring, we can actually take the amount that's owed from the amount that they're eligible to receive to actually pay off that debt. So the problem comes if a student decides during the summer to do a total withdrawal and they want to come back in the fall of another year. We can only take $200 from that year that they're eligible for to pay off the previous debt. So the summer of this year, and then we go into fall of 2019, 2020, if the student withdraws during that summer and they owe money back, and let's say they owe $600, only $200 can be used from 2019, 2020 to pay off the debt from 2018, 2019. So that student still ends up owing $400.
And it's good that you know that. I mean, that sounds really complicated, but they make it very easy to understand in the financial aid office here at Florida Gateway College. We'll continue our conversation with Travis George from Florida Gateway College when we come back. Don't go away.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread. and kiss them all soundly.
Lights out. Good night.
And put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome back to Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television. Travis George is the Associate Director of Financial Aid here at Florida Gateway College. We're talking about money is no excuse for you not to go to school. If you're telling your parents that you know mom and dad they don't have any money, and well, there's grants available, there's scholarships available. All you got to do is apply for what they call financial aid. And Travis is an expert on financial aid. He's been here several years and knows the ropes on how to do financial aid right. When should somebody apply for financial aid? I mean, you know, a lot of kids, and I don't mean to lump all kids into one category, but there's a tendency to procrastinate, wait to the last minute. You know, the deadline's 2 months away, I don't have to. Is it better to do it early than late?
Yes, and I'm actually glad you said that. A lot of our students don't know, but we try to really promote this. The actual day to start filling out a financial aid application is October 1st. So a student who's planning on attending school, let's say August of 2019, can fill out their financial aid application October of 2018. And what happened was the administration decided that a couple things needed to factor in. Most students who are going to major universities are putting in their college applications for admissions during August or September of their high school year. So they wanted to kind of mirror that with the financial aid process, so that way institutions already had applications well in advance. The good thing also is that with the introduction of the IRS data retrieval tool, students are and parents are able to pull their financial aid information directly from the IRS webpage in most instances, and they're able to merge that onto their financial aid application without having to have their 1040s, their 1040A, or their 1040 Easy. This allows it to be completely easy to put information in, and anything that's transferred from the IRS, of course, doesn't have to be changed. It automatically goes to the college, and in most instances, if a student is selected for what's called verification, they only have to turn in one document. But, sorry, I said all that to say that October 1st is the time that students can start filling out their financial aid applications.
Let me ask you about, is it first to apply, first to receive the money, or how does that work? Or is it, I mean, you would think
Right.
that the later you waited, that they would have to process your paperwork later rather than sooner.
Right.
Is that the way it
Typically, what I've found is students who will come in and say, hey, I've been selected for verification. What we find is those students have normally done their financial aid applications later. Now, we don't pick the students who've been selected for verification. That actually comes from the Department of Education's Central Processing System. So once a student does a financial aid application, they'll typically pick which students are going to be selected for verification, which means other documents have to be turned in. But I've found most students who do it earlier, those students very rarely get selected for verification, meaning that their FAFSA applications come in and all they have to do is register.
What is the application form? Is it a long form?
Not necessarily. The hardest part, because there are several steps to filling out a financial aid application. One is making sure that the student has a federal student aid identification, which replaced the PIN, and so that's how students electronically sign it. And then once they go and create their FSAID is the abbreviation. Once they create that, they'll go to the FAFSA.gov page, start the application process. It goes through demographics, asking questions about ensuring their address is correct, if they're male or female, high school, where they're coming into college, and then it'll ask questions that will determine if they're independent or dependent student. And then based on that, it goes to the parents' information if it's needed. Then parents' information is just demographics and financials. Then it goes back to the student page with just financial information, sign and submit.
Now, is there a deadline? I mean, obviously, there's got to be a deadline for each semester, correct?
Typically, the deadline to have a financial aid application in is June 30th. So a student who's looking to enroll for the 2018-2019, they actually have until June 30th of 2019 to have a financial aid application submitted. So there's a lot of time. So you're looking at in the 18-19 age year beginning. Yes, October 1, and it goes into June of that next year. That's correct. I wanted to make
So
sure.
that's an 8-month window.
Yes, sir.
That you have
An
to
8-month
apply.
window.
And the sooner you get it done, the sooner you will receive word, or?
Right. The sooner you get it done, the sooner that information can be given to students so that way they know how much aid they actually qualify for. And now, some institutions, they have to have those financial aid applications on hand because they are limited with the amount of money that they do have, money to award to students. So in those instances where you say first come, first serve, or first served type basis, that would be on aid that is based on what they give us. So like the federal Pell Grant, if a student's eligible, they'll get that because that's what they're eligible for. But the additional grants like the Education Opportunity Grant and the Student Assistant Grant, those are limited. And so that's based on just however much we have and how much unmet need. And typically that will go to students who completed their financial aid applications first.
Now, when are you going to find out whether you got what you got? I mean, is that all part of the letter that comes to say you've gotten financial aid?
Yes, sir. We typically send out award letters to students notifying them that we received their application and also that we have awarded them a certain amount. What we normally do is for the upcoming year. So when we start in October, we normally don't start processing financial aid applications until later in the year, notifying students that we received their FAFSA application and we're ready to start moving forward with the next process. Or if we're missing documents, they'll get what's called a missing information letter, letting them know that they've been selected for verification. And in order for us to process that application, they'll need to turn in additional documents.
Now, is it typical the same award? I mean, are there similar awards like 3,000 something, or is it different for every student?
It does differ. And that number differs based upon EFC numbers, and it also differs because we are also putting award. I believe we put into the award if the student is eligible for some of the Bright Futures scholarships, which some of those scholarships actually cover full tuition. So there are students who are here who could possibly be receiving what's called the gold medallion, and that covers full tuition plus books, and they have a 0 EFC, so they're qualifying for that full Pell amount, which is like a total refund going to them.
So what you're saying is that the Pell is determined by whether you have bright futures? Do they look at other factors?
No, sir. No, the Pell is just determined by the EFC number.
So bright futures could be the cherry on the cake.
Correct. Yes, sir. The Bright Futures could be what takes care of tuition and books. And so if a student is awarded $3,048 in the fall, and their tuition is already covered, that's a full refund of $3,048.
That you can do with however you want.
Well,
yes, what
sir.
I'm saying is if
Yes,
there are
sir.
expenses that you have incurred
Correct.
with being a student, that's going to, like if you want to move into the dormitories,
Correct.
that could be pay
That
for
could- yes, sir, that
the
could
meal
cover
plan
that.
and your room and board.
Correct. So the way that we try to promote it is that we want that you have to pay educational expenses first as a student. You take care of your educational expenses, and that's what federal aid is used for. If students have federal aid and they're not using it for educational purposes, of course, we don't tell us that.
We don't want you taking a trip to the Bahamas
Right.
on your federal financial aid, because
Correct.
that obviously wouldn't be right. What about scholarship? Well, I tell you what, let's talk a little bit about scholarships.
Yes.
If you've got a program, I guess one of our more expensive programs would probably be nursing. Mm-hmm. You got a nurse, you're in the nursing program, and you got the Pell Grant and you got Bright Futures, and you're still a little bit short. Is there a way that maybe a scholarship could be used to help offset what you're missing?
We actually, with our nursing students, we actually have a scholarship application that there's a couple foundations that only award scholarships to nursing students. And I remember you were saying that some students say they don't have enough money to come to school. We actually had a donor who wanted to give scholarships to students who made too much money to qualify for the federal Pell Grant. And this scholarship actually covered the student's full tuition for the fall. So a student who, as long as they were not enrolled full time, what we find is that the first time enrollment, or there were some nursing students who did not qualify for the federal Pell Grant, and they were enrolled in 9.5 credit hours. Well, this scholarship, all they had to do was fill out the application, type up the 200-word essay, they submit that. It actually took care of their entire tuition, and it actually gave them a credit. So when refunds are issued this semester, they'll be getting a refund, and it was as simple as just filling out the application and submitting an essay.
And the people over in the financial aid office can look at specific students' needs and then say, well, you know what, this is available for you, that we can help you with that if that's necessary.
Correct. Melinda, who works in our financial aid office, who handles the scholarships, the very first thing she's looking at are students who have a high unmet need. So once the student does an application, she looks at that student, she looks at the essay, and she looks at what that student is matched to. And based off of whatever unmet need is still left on that student's account, she starts awarding from there. So definitely any students who still have a higher unmet need, she is awarding those students, making sure that they are the first ones to receive the scholarship funds, and then it's based off of, from that point, going down lower and lower.
And that's what we said in the beginning. There's no excuse why you shouldn't go to school, because there's money available in pockets through the foundation scholarships, through financial aid, and other means. We're going to take our last break on Perspective here on Florida Gateway College Television, WCJX Radio and WQHL Radio. We'll be right back.
Coals improperly extinguished can cause a wildfire.
Hey guys, it's Smokey!
It looks as if Smokey is going to use the drown, stir, drown and feel technique. After the first drown, a good start. Next, another drink. And finally, a close feel.
Is it cool? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Smokey, catch! Oh, my bad, Smokey.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Welcome back to Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television. Travis George is the Associate Director of Financial Aid here at Florida Gateway College, and we're talking about everything you need to know, and we're afraid to ask about financial aid. And again, it's like we said earlier, Travis, there's no reason why, if you're using money as an excuse, you know, a lot of people use money as an excuse of why they can't come back to school, or time, but there is money available, and time passes whether you're going to school or whether you're not going to school. So
Correct.
Why not get in school and pass the time versus not get in school and pass that same time? So again, if people have any questions that they need to ask of the financial aid personnel, how do they reach you?
Well, they can give us a call. Our office number is 386-754-4244. They can also email our office at financial_aid@fgc.edu, and we can answer any questions that any person may have. We'd be happy to help.
And you guys are in Building 14 here on campus, which is where the cafeteria and bookstore. And
Yes, sir.
again, for those who may not be familiar with the college, we outsourced our bookstore. Follett's now is the bookstore provider here on campus, which is in a way reduced because of the buying power that they have. They've been able to reduce the cost of textbooks.
Correct.
And they have kind of intertwined with the financial aid office for book slips and things like that. So things haven't changed that much through that. Just maybe you're not spending as much on books now.
Correct, and they actually offer an option. Students can actually go online and order books and have them either shipped to the bookstore or shipped directly to their house using their financial aid. So it almost makes it convenient from almost doing all your shopping online. You can do everything from the comforts of your home. And here at Florida Gateway College, we have a lot of traditional and non-traditional students. So even students who are thinking they may not have time to go to school or have time for class, finding we have classes that cater to every individual here.
Travis, thank you for being on the program, and thank you for watching Perspective here on Florida Gateway College Television. Until next time, I'm Mike McKee. So long.